When I was in school, I was a model student. I graduated with a 4.2 GPA. I took enough advanced placement courses to start college as a second year. I was in 5 clubs and ran one of them myself. I played 3 sports. I worked 2 jobs. I spoke 2 languages. And I even earned myself a page on the official Internet Movie Database, which doesn't actually mean much, but I thought it would be a fun flex to include here. But even with all that going for me, I never learned what would actually lead me to success during my 13 years in the public education system. So it made sense that college would be too much for me and that I would add myself to the list of high school all-stars turned college dropouts. In hindsight, I could have just skipped college and thrived on my own like I'm doing now, but the reason why I say my schooling failed me still is because it actively deterred me from finding my own path back when I was at my most impressionable. It's not that I didn't have creative or entrepreneurial tendencies, but rather that the people I was supposed to be learning from punished me for creative and entrepreneurial actions and rewarded me for actions that would lead me to failure. The first instance where my education failed me was when I started my first ever business. When I was in elementary school, we had a currency system where we were rewarded for good behavior and answering questions during class discussions, and we would use that currency at the end of the year during an auction that our teachers hosted where we could bid on toys and supplies using the money that we earned throughout the school year. And as soon as I reached the grade where I was able to participate in this system, I also became the reason why the system was discontinued in the following years. I didn't set out to game the system in the way that I did. I just landed on an opportunity to do so as a result of being a kid who had a pen and some sticky notes. I had a few things going for me when I came up with my idea. First off, I was interested in animals thanks to Zaboomafoo and my ZooBooks subscription. I was into drawing since it was something fun to do other than going outside. And I also won a goldfish at the county fair, which made me think about how cool it would be if I could bring my fish with me to school. And since actually bringing my goldfish with me wasn't an option, I decided to draw a goldfish in a bowl on a sticky note and place it on my desk. And that would serve as the first of many desk pets that I would make over the course of the next few months. Which is funny to think about now that I know about the rubber duck debugging method, but the idea of having a desk pet appealed to so many of my classmates that they started asking me to make some for them too. And I was originally going to make these desk pets for them for free because I thought it would be cool if the entire class had these desk pets, and I already enjoyed making them. But my classmates felt like it was fair compensation to give me $1 class dollar in exchange for a desk pet. So I went with it. I created a waiting list. I expanded my drawings from just goldfish to whatever animal they requested, and I even commissioned other artists to help me fulfill orders, especially since people started asking me for Neopet drawings, and I wasn't particularly good at drawing those. But my desk pets era would come to an end when the end of year auction rolled around, and I was able to outbid everyone for whatever prize I wanted. When the teachers realized how much money I had, they not only limited the number of prizes I could win, but they also banned the exchange of class currency between students, and they banned the use of desk pets in the classroom. Looking back, I think it was fine to stop my operation because it skewed the purpose for what the class currency was supposed to be used for and how you were supposed to acquire it. But instead of ending the story with punishment, I wish I was guided to use that energy and perspective in a more productive way, so I could nurture the entrepreneurial spirit that was shining through from this project. Instead, I took that punishment to heart since I was under the impression that adults know what's best. And I went back to just being a normal, top-performing student until I got my next big idea a few years later when the new hit series Diary of a Wimpy Kid would make its debut. In that series, the main characters started a comic strip and were distributing it to their friends throughout the school. And as someone who already liked drawing and coming up with stories myself, I thought it would be a cool idea to make something similar. But I didn't want to just make a comic series. At the time, I was learning that I liked writing more than I liked drawing, so instead of just making comic strips, I decided to make an entire newspaper to serve as the framework for those comic strips. I made this decision because of my experience with actual newspapers. Back then, I actually enjoyed reading the newspaper, and one of the best parts of doing so was reading the comic strips that were included in them. I felt like the comics in there were special, because despite the newspaper being many pages long, there was only ever one page dedicated to comics, and it was fun getting there after reading whatever articles caught my interest. So for my newspaper, I wrote a bunch of fake stories to fill up a blank page, and at the very end, I included a single 3-panel comic strip, followed by a series of fake coupons since newspapers had those too. After making a few of these newspapers at home, I decided to bring some to school and share them with my classmates, and they became an instant hit. If you were in elementary school at the same time as I was, then you know just how big of a deal Diary of a Wimpy Kid was, so our school having its own newspaper with a comic strip was insanely hype at the time. I immediately had people asking me if they could contribute in some way, and in just a few days, I had a team of 16 kids helping me produce this newspaper. We increased our story output, we increased our comic output, and we even increased the number of newspapers we could distribute because for the people who couldn't come up with their own stories or drawings, they helped out by making handwritten copies of our finished products. I also took what I learned from my Desk Pets endeavor and not only distributed this newspaper for free, but also made sure that every team member knew ahead of time that they wouldn't be receiving compensation for helping me out. But everyone on the team was cool with it, and for a few weeks we spent every recess and lunch period working on these newspapers, which, in hindsight, should have been a beautiful thing for teachers to see. Because who wouldn't want to see a bunch of children working together on a project during a time that was meant for their recreation? Our downfall this time wasn't so much in what we were doing, but in the competition we created as a result of our success. Our newspaper was so successful that another group of students decided to start their own. But while we kept our stories fictitious and based on no one at all, our competition started writing articles about actual students and using them as a means to bully the students in question. So when the teachers caught wind of this journalistic approach to bullying, they banned the production of all student newspapers. And just like my Desk Pets journey, my newspaper one also ended with punitive action and no attention to what it takes for a student to start a project like this and manage a team of 16 people. Which is why I'm glad society as a whole is becoming more keen on how the public education system is failing our children, and that online education resources are becoming stronger than ever. Because even when I was at the top of the system, which I was for my 6 remaining years of public schooling, I wasn't actually growing. I figured there was no reason to go above and beyond since I was already at the top. And even in high school, I watched as people got shot down for giving business and entrepreneurship a go. I figured that so long as I was doing well in school, that everything else would fall into place too. And that notion was reinforced by all the authoritative figures in my life, praising me for how smart I was and how well I was doing. But for the next 10 years of my life, I'd learned that you don't make progress in life just by cruising through it and making bad decisions. Which is why I find myself here now at 29, both undoing the mistakes I made in my 20s and trying to build myself a better foundation for my 30s.